This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everybody. First, I apologize for being AWOL yesterday. We simply had a power outage in the house, so nothing was working. So to compensate for that, we are going to have a dialogue today. So if you have any questions, go ahead.
Hi, Francis.
Alexios.
Francis, would you say that all there is experiencing?
That's a very limiting statement.
That's good. I'm open to hear, to listen.
It's if I can use an analogy, it's the same thing as if you would say all there is to your body is experiencing or is perceiving. I mean, there are many things in the body going on that, like digesting, immune system reactions, etc., that are not necessarily consciously experienced. So the creative aspect of reality, it's also not destructive, but annihilative aspect, and it's sustaining aspect. They definitely include perceptions, but why limit reality to perception?
Because this is what I know.
Yeah, but you don't know. Yeah, but you know very little. We know very little. So, especially, we don't know that which we don't know. So if we say perceiving is all there is to reality, it implies.
Sorry. If we say
perceiving is all there is to reality, it implies that we know that for certain. It implies that we know that there are aspects of reality, that there are no aspects of reality that are not perceived. But we cannot make this statement, can we?
To say that there are no aspects that are not perceived.
Yeah.
No, we might know that there are aspects that are not perceived. No? We can make this assumption, I think. Because several functions of the body, when are looked from a second person perspective, things are happening over there. But as a first person, we don't perceive them.
Yeah. So that applies to whatever is perceived, right? It applies to the waking state experience. People would argue, idealists would argue, yes, but all of that could be just perceived and have no existence independently from being perceived. That's a possibility. I'm not discarding this possibility. I'm just saying that we cannot assert it either. That's all.
I make it too anthropomorphic when I think that all there is experiencing. Is this right? I limit it. You said I limit it. This is enough, I think.
Yeah. We don't necessarily make it anthropomorphic if we grant awareness a universal status. But we still limit reality by asserting that there is nothing else to reality than mind perceptions through some form of mind by reality itself. And
I'm not sure that I was talking about the perceptions themselves, but the reality of the perceptions, which is experiencing.
or the reality of perceptions
The way
the reality of the perception is whatever I call awareness. Yes. So awareness in this case and reality are the same, but it doesn't mean that awareness requires perceptions, and it doesn't mean that reality is restricted to perceptions or is restricted to perceptions and pure awareness. Because that is an anthropomorphic projection onto reality.
Okay, Franz. When you talk about this, which is hearing these words right now, and you say whatever it is.
The reality
which is hearing.
Yeah, whatever that reality is.
What do you have in mind when you say whatever this reality is?
What I mean is that I'm not assigning to this reality any restriction. I'm not restricting this reality to mind or to a mind form. I remain in complete not knowing about this reality, meaning in complete openness.
Yes. When I suggest that all there is experiencing, I try to limit it somehow, right? I try to.
Yeah, because you say all there is to awareness or to reality is experiencing. What about creating without experiencing? What about whatever happens behind the scenes? What about aspects of reality in which there is no time elapsing?
Good.
What about the possibility of other dimensions?
I guess that they were going to be experienced. That's why I suggest this.
But you cannot limit reality to that which is. One way to limit it is to say, yes, when reality experiences itself, that's it.
You say when reality experiences itself, there is the experiencing aspect. But there are more aspects.
I'm not saying that there are more aspects or there are not more aspects. I'm just saying that we cannot make this decision. We have to remain open. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In my view, to limit non-duality to idealism, which is limiting reality to that which is perceived, aka experienced. To me, I don't see precisely any experiential grounds to make this statement. And people who make these statements, they say, yes, but since we don't experience anything besides what we experience through minds, why posit aspects of reality that are not experienced through mind? That they say Occam's razor, if we apply Occam's razor, we shouldn't consider elements of reality that are not perceived through mind, in mind form. The problem with this statement is that if we apply it to idealism itself, because I don't perceive other minds, applying the same principle, I should say, no, other minds are necessary hypothesis. The only mind I know is this mind, Francis' mind, which seems to be limited. And then that leads me to a pure solipsistic position. So if someone is a consistent idealist, his or her consistency compels them to be, in fact, more than that, to be, in fact, a solipsist. So either you are an inconsistent idealist, if you are an idealist, or you are implicitly a solipsist. And to be a solipsist is a little far-fetched, because where is love? Where is openness? So there are elements of solipsism that kind of are at odds with our deepest intuition. So why not be, my position is not to declare that there is more to reality than what we perceive, or than what can be perceived. I'm not making this statement, but I'm not making either the statement that restricts reality to that which perceives and that which can be perceived. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I did not even realize that I suggest idealism, but I see that I use the word experiencing, and you answer with this which is experienced. Why do you think this is happening?
Well, experience has two sides, experiencing, right? That which experiences and whatever gets experienced.
I cannot see this clearly, to be honest.
Okay.
Why cannot I reduce it to experiencing? And I have to put two aspects to it.
No, I agree. Ultimately, what you say is true, in that sense that that which experiences and whatever is being experienced are the same. They share the same reality. So the reality of that which experiences, whatever that is, and the reality of that which is experienced is the same reality. In that sense, you're right. But the word experience to me, perhaps not to you, has a different meaning than the verb to be. In other words, for me, with my understanding of the word to experience, there can be being without experiencing. However, they cannot be experiencing without being, right? Because there is at least the being of whatever it is that experiences. So it is this smart, it hinges on the definition of the word to experience. And to me, to experience means that there is something perceived in experiencing. There is a perceiving quality to it, perhaps not a phenomenal perceiving quality necessarily, but there is, anyway, for me to be and to perceive refer to two different meanings. For instance, I can say this chair is, but I'm not going to say this chair perceives. I don't know, you see, but
Can I take you a little bit back?
please.
Oh, thank you. When you said anyway, I want to hear this. You said not necessarily perceiving phenomenal.
Yes. Because in understanding, for instance, what we perceive is non-phenomenal.
So you would call understanding being, according to what you say?
No,
No.
no. I would call understanding a form of perception.
Okay.
It's an apperception. If we would make the distinction in vocabulary, I would call perceiving the perceiving of phenomena, and apperception a form of direct, instantaneous perception, but which doesn't correspond to the category of bodily sensations, external sense perceptions, and thoughts. For instance, there are perceptions that tells us there is awareness, or there are perception that tells us there is something rather than nothing. There is being. There are perceptions that tells us I am. So these apperceptions are non-phenomenal.
And what do you call being? Clear being, without perceptions or apperceptions? Or can there be clear being with perceptions and apperceptions?
You know, it refers to this very profound question by Bill Clinton. It depends on what the meaning of is. It's very profound. What is the meaning of to be? Because when we ask the question, what is the meaning of is? In the first part of the sentence, we already use is. What is the meaning? And so, because you asked me what do you call being, and we have, Heidegger says, you know, in the introduction of Sein und Zeit, he says something like, yes, we all have the intuition of being. Why? Because we use the verb to be constantly. So all human beings we have. The only problem is that it is vague. That's why an important question in philosophy is not whether there is being or not. Is what does it mean? You see, and being has to be make a distinct, defined in contradistinction with what you call beings, with a plural. So, for instance, he uses the word being with a capital B and the word beings with lowercase b. So that being with capital B is the being of all beings, is a reality. So I use the word reality instead of everything that exists, you see? And that, but when we do that, we have taken a very important step, moving from this very vague concept of being that we all have, because we all human beings use the verb to be. Now we have moved towards making the distinction with being, with capital B, you know, and the beings. So being is a beings, is a being of all beings. It is that, it is a reality of everything that exists, of all existing things. And the existing things are not necessarily physical things. They can be thoughts. They can be other things we don't even know, given the limitation of our human perceiving apparatus. But so then we have extracted the meaning of being from the meaning of the beings. You see, that's a very important step. And that's what I call reality. Whatever it is that creates, sustains, annihilates all beings, all things, is what I call reality. In this definition, I use is, whatever it is. But we need to use words at a certain point.
Creates, annihilates, sustains, and knows, right?
Also, yes. But knowing is only one aspect, just as creating, annihilating, and sustaining is another aspect. And in fact, it is kind of included because there's a creation of thought. You cannot have a thought without the thought being perceived, right? You can have you cannot have a perception without the perception being perceived. So it could be defined as the creation, the sustaining, and the annihilation of perception, of mentations, would be what we call awareness. But awareness is not all there is to being. It's simply a limited aspect of its creativity. For instance, the creation, the manifestation, and the annihilation of a muon, or
of what?
Of a muon, an elementary particle, is not part, it doesn't correspond to awareness as a description. But still fits into the framework of being. So when I say awareness is reality, awareness and reality are one, it's very important because we experience awareness directly. And that's the important fact, that awareness is the experience of reality experiencing itself. So since I define awareness as the reality that experiences perceptions, because I define it in terms of reality, then awareness and being are one. But if I define awareness as an attribute of reality, as the experiencing aspect of reality, for instance, that could be a definition of awareness, then awareness is not identical with reality because it is simply an attribute of reality. On the other hand, you cannot have reality without its attributes. So the moment you have awareness, you have reality. So the experience of awareness is the experience of reality.
Francis, is it okay if I keep talking with you?
Go ahead.
You said attributes, and then we have the qualities.
And then what?
We have also the qualities.
Yeah, the distinction is, if you use qualities, it usually refers to phenomenal qualities such as, I don't know, size, weight, color, shape. Whereas attributes are non-phenomenal aspects of reality, such as awareness, presence, being.
I was calling those modalities. Okay, happiness, where do you put happiness?
Attribute of reality.
You put
In other
there.
words, the distinction between, if you will, between modality, what you call modalities, and what I call attributes, is that's a distinction that Spinoza makes. Is that if you have even one attribute, you have reality. Whereas if you have one modality of a thing, you don't necessarily have the thing. For instance, if you have the color red, you don't necessarily have a red cap, because if you see the color red, it could be a red car, or it could be a red anything. So when you have a modality, you don't have the thing, the reality that exhibits this modality. Whereas the attributes, they are all proprietary, if you will, the attributes of reality, what in fact Spinoza calls it substance. So if you have an attribute of reality or substance, you have the substance, because this attribute is proprietary, if you will, to the substance. For instance, love is a proprietary attribute of reality, or God, as Spinoza calls it. Intelligence or understanding, beauty, eternity, presence, awareness. If awareness is seen as an attribute and not seen as a reality. But in my case, I point out by defining awareness as a reality, which is perceiving these worlds right now, I kind of move directly from the attribute of perceiving to the substance, the being that perceives.
Okay. Okay, Francis.
You know, with a Greek like you, we have to be a little bit like Aristoteles and use a little bit of his language.
First of all, it's good that you say every time this about idealism and solipsism, because I find in my experience that idealism and solipsism kind of go together. I don't know
That's very
about.
true.
Yes.
That's very true. It's very true. It's a point which is often missed, and a lot of Advaita teachings, they have this solipsistic or idealistic bias, which is not necessary at all. It's not necessary to be an idealist. Non-duality is much bigger, much more open than that.
Okay. I have more, but maybe another time. Okay. Thank you very much.
Hi, Francis.
I get it.
Francis, is it necessary that we have an understanding through investigation, or if the understanding is clear, in some ways of when you say it in a certain way, or maybe like just in a different way than investigation, if it's clear in something is clear in that way, is it still necessary to use investigation if it hasn't reached to a conclusive place? But it's just that when you say something like what is here right now that just cuts right through for me. But when I say ask yourself this question, and as I mentioned to you once, that I just go completely silent within. But it's not a silence which is conclusive proof of I understand or I know or nothing. It's just pure silence. Now that occurred to me today that, well, that may just be fine, because when we look at what really is, there is a deep silence. There is a deep peace, almost, if you will. I don't know what to call it. But there isn't really somebody trying to analyze the peace. The peace is there. But when I try to ask myself, I haven't done the investigation for a while now. I mean, I try just ask the question and I go silent. That's how I had observed. So I was just asking you whether
Remember
that's
that
conclusive.
regarding the investigation, you cannot do a fake investigation. You can only do investigation if you have a question. In other words, some detective at the robbery division in some police department, it wouldn't make sense for this detective to investigate a burglary that has not been committed. In other words, he needs to have been notified that a crime has been committed, and he needs, as a result, to be interested in finding who did it. So it's the same here. If you have no question arising in you spontaneously, naturally, there is nothing to investigate. The investigation has to start from a question, which is your question, not somebody else's question. If it is not your question, there is no investigation. So don't worry. The investigation is needed only if you have a question that arises, which is your question.
So it doesn't have to be the question like ask yourself the question that I can't remember the question right now, but the one that you usually, there is one particular one, right?
Yeah. How do you know that awareness is limited?
Correct.
If it
So
is not
it's
your
not,
question, No, it has to be for you an important question. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense.
And when you say limited, exactly what do you mean? Are you trying to say that this awareness is not this body mind only? There is something, it's not limited to this, but it's not limited to anything else either. Is that what we're saying when we say limited?
Yeah, but already the most important aspect of the question is limited to or by this body mind. That's the most important aspect of the question, because most people believe that awareness is limited to and by this body mind. Then once you have discovered that you have no proof of that, you can ask other question. Is it limited by its content? Is it limited by whatever appears in it? And how do I know? So that's a further question, because of course you can say, you know, if you live in India, you say, yes, this awareness is not limited by the body or by the mind, but nevertheless, when the body dies, this limited awareness may end up in bad places where it is going to be very uncomfortable. So that has to be investigated. How do I know that? How is it not this type of reincarnation? Is it not also a kind of limitation superimposed onto awareness? For instance, if awareness has to reincarnate, what is it that forces it to reincarnate? Already there is a limitation there.
Yeah, but this isn't a belief that I have, that it has to go to bad places or anything. Like, I may live in India, but I don't necessarily have this belief.
No,
Yeah.
but I am using this example to show that we can superimpose onto awareness other limitations than just for awareness to be dependent upon the body mind and to be limited by the body mind. We could impose other restrictions, whereas in fact, so every time we impose limitations on awareness, we create a separate and limited entity. I mean, we believe that we are a separate and limited entity.
So when it is spoken about that what is really here right now, this may be more clear than the fact of saying, is awareness limited? Can I answer with authority to the fact that I know this awareness to be, I don't know, anything, let's say eternal, or, you know, never born, never died. I don't necessarily have any beliefs that say that it is not eternal, but I necessarily don't have any conclusive anything to base this in. I don't even know how I would go about figuring out whether it is or it isn't, right? Yes, because we don't want it to be a belief.
All that is required is not to know, to not know.
Yeah, but Francis, it just has a little bit of the essence of, like, you know, this not to know seems to be a bit of a belief that I'm willing to believe that it is unlimited, and I don't know that it's limited, but it doesn't have conviction that I'm sure that I have investigated and now I know I have no way to do it through this route.
Well, you can be, well, through the investigation, you can acquire the certainty that you don't know one way or the other. And that can be an absolute certainty. So that establishes a clear difference between where you are at and where 99.99% of mankind is at. Because for 99.99% of mankind, they believe they know for certain, without any doubt, that they are a limited and separate entity.
Right.
So if you have moved from that to this absolute certainty that you don't know, it completely changes the rule of the game. Because then it allows for you to live your life from a different perspective, not to make this different perspective a belief system, no, but to give it a chance as a possibility, that's all. To give
So
it a chance as a possibility, because now you know that it is as possible as the perspective from which you have lived most of your life up until now. So you have a lot to catch up if you want now to test this new possibility. You have a lot to catch up, and that's why I say just conduct experiment after experiment after experiment.
I think Yogesh Chawla has his mic on.
Anyway, now you can go ahead, Gayatri, or
Anji.
through.
Francis, I was wondering, can you do a session in Hindi one day? Because I in Hindi.
Oh
You'll have
no,
to
I
learn.
cannot.
You know
I
a
would
lot
have
of
to
Hindi
learn.
words already. I'm just kidding. But you know, I completely agree with you that the point is to get, you know, that what you stated, like to be away from what 99.9% are living in that conviction. To lose that conviction is the
Yeah.
false conviction. But my only question, the question that I started with was just this, that is it necessary to do this through the route of investigation? I would love to do it, but I get stuck there.
I've told you the only proper way to do the investigation is if you have a question which is your question, or if you have something that you want to find out experientially, you need to be interested.
No, I'm interested and I have a question. I just don't know how to do it through a question investigation method. And when you say something direct.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, Gayatri, because we are all following a different path as truth lovers. So that which matters is not what you encounter on somebody else's path.
Sure.
The only thing that matters is what you encounter on your path. And how, if you encounter a roadblock will be some kind of question or something you want to figure out somehow. It is not necessarily an abstract intellectual question, a philosophical question. No, it may be something more different, but
Can it be a simple question like when I leave everything aside no thoughts or anything, and I'm completely in kind of stillness. I can be in stillness, but when I'm trying to think in terms of functioning, then the stillness is not there in the same way for me. This is my
Well,
question, though, how to
don't
live
make
it.
it, don't make it a state. Don't make it a state. Understand that what you are is not really affected but by what you perceive.
This is true. But I get kind of stuck in so-called relative functioning when I have to. So now I'm not where I know what I have to do, what do I have to think, and how do I have to act. I've lost that of knowing what to do.
Well,
And
in most cases, in many cases, it doesn't make a difference. In other words, if you need to consult with a doctor, for instance, it doesn't make much difference whether you are in ignorance or not. It's the same as if you need to fix your car. The practical questions that arise are the same ones. So you can, for the purpose of conducting your business in your daily life, live like everybody else lives. We know how to live our lives that way. We have lived that from the beginning of our life. We have been well trained to live our life from the vantage point of being a body mind. That which really matters is what's your deepest understanding. When your deepest understanding is I'm not a body mind, then you are free. It's like an actor on stage. He is playing Othello on stage, right? He's suffering. He's extremely jealous. He's tormented, right? I mean, it's not fun
right.
to be. It's not fun to be Othello. But this guy knows that although he's playing Othello on stage, he's completely safe. He's just the actor from the Royal Shakespeare Company playing Othello. So after the representation, he's going to go to some pub with the other actors, and they are going to have some lukewarm beer and disgusting and have fun together. So that's the way to live your life. It can be tragic, but at the same time, deep inside, what you are is never affected.
So at some point, this becomes almost like a subtle reminding, like maybe Vivek, that I would remind
Yes,
myself
yes.
of it.
And then you don't remind yourself. You don't even need that because this piece of the background is always there.
Yeah, I think,
Even during the activities.
when you said, what is your question? What glaringly I could see is like when there is interaction, like human interaction, so to speak, but not necessarily with a being live, but even within myself in relation to sensitivity and being considerate. I go to the point of being considerate, but within myself. The being doesn't know it. It's all within. It's happening within. I would put aside things that would be easy for me and be more considerate. So sometimes there is like, okay, I don't know what is it that I'm supposed to do here. And then I hear people saying, no, just stay with the awareness and you will automatically know. But that doesn't seem to happen sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I don't know how I'm
No,
to
but
function.
it requires investigation. Sometimes even it requires asking friends for advice. I mean, it's not something that we don't live in isolation. Sometimes the right thing to do is to ask for advice. What should I do? I mean, I've done that quite often with my teacher, with friends. I'm still doing it. Even in the question of, how do I handle this situation to be considerate with that person? For instance, if you have friends if that person, for instance, belong to certain profession, you can ask friends who, and if the problem arises within the framework of a professional relationship with this person, you can ask friends who are in the same profession, what is a considerate thing to do? You see, if you have hired a lawyer, for instance, for a problem you have, right? And then you feel for some reason that you were too quick and that this lawyer is not the best, is not the one who has the best experience to help you out with your case. So then the question is, I mean, this lawyer you hired, there was no fault on his own, right? But then you want to change lawyers, so you can then it would be good to ask other friends that you know who are lawyers and present them with the problem you are facing, and they can help you how to be considerate with this first lawyer that you have hired and that now you are firing. You know how to do it while being at the same time as considerate as possible. So that's an example. You can and in other words, to be the impersonal action doesn't mean that you sit there in meditation and you wait up until all of a sudden, bloop, you get the answer. No, it may require for you first to think as you do within yourself, but it may require also to ask people around you.
Yeah, so the feedback seems to be that subtly that there is too much consideration, and I need to be a little more probably insensitive, but that doesn't feel good within my space. I don't like to be that way.
You have to be correct. You have to be, but sometimes to be impersonal requires not to be weak. Not to be weak. If I take the example that I just mentioned and I tweak it a little bit, you hire this lawyer to do something for you, and then this lawyer does something unethical towards you. That's different from the previous cases, right? And so you ask other lawyers' friends, what should I do? And these friends tell you, you should fire the guy because the guy is screwed you and he's going to screw you again, and you should. And you agree, yeah? Now the question is, how do I fire him? Do I fire him without telling him why? In order not to offend him? Or do I fire him by telling him, you did this. It was not very nice. And that's why I don't want to have business with you any longer. So that's a more stringent way of firing him, right? Because you are telling him, I am firing you for cause. But which one is the impersonal way? The weak way not saying why, not telling him anything, or the strong way by telling him everything. You are going to offend him, yes. He's not going to like it, yes. But in the grand scheme of things, you are doing a service to society and to him also by letting him know that what he did was not correct and that there could be consequences in the future, so that you give him an opportunity to amend his behavior. So in fact, by being firm, by not being weak towards this person, you are in fact acting in his own interest. At the same time, you are acting in the interest of all, of justice, because then he's not going to screw, perhaps, hopefully not, his next client. Not just.
I completely agree with what you're saying, that you have to be honest and clear. I actually have been doing just that. It doesn't seem to have, I don't know, it doesn't seem to have worked with a certain, let's say,
Because you are,
personality type. Yeah.
I've also told you many times, don't expect outcomes. Don't expect them to change their behavior. Remember what the Bhagavad Gita says. Perform the action, but be not attached to the fruit of your action, right? So be not attached to the result. Do the right thing and just leave it open. Do the right thing and just leave it open.
Thank you, Francis.
Hi, Francis.
Yes, Sujata, hi.
Hi. Just a follow-on to the first question about awareness being experience, and then you pointed out that there are other aspects. So I just wanted to get some clarity just in my head to make sure that I am okay. So from an experiential standpoint, it is the being that is obvious and indisputable, and the fact that it is the reality of the human experience, that's also indisputable. And then the rest of it is actually through reason based on this, right? The fact that awareness is a reality, and then the reality of the universe, and then there can be only one reality. So the reality of the universe and awareness has to be the one reality.
Remember the fact that awareness is a reality. It's my definition of awareness is the reality of our human experience, right? That's
Yes.
my definition.
Yes. And that's what I was saying. Yes. And so then, because there can only be one reality, then I, awareness, am the reality of the universe also.
Yeah.
Right?
Once awareness is defined as reality.
Exactly. And then all the other things become apparent. The creator, sustainer, destroyer, all those aspects come into being at that point. Correct?
Absolutely, because as I told Alex, was because we have not right off the bat reduced reality to its experiencing attribute.
Yeah, but that is where you start, because that is what is experiential.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Yeah.
That's why in the in the Vedantic tradition, we very much start with awareness because of its experiential, because that's the experiential aspect of reality. We cannot experience reality through the world, through perceptions, you know? We first have to experience it as awareness.
Right. And that
and,
is what is indisputable.
and then there is a second step in which then, okay, then there is only one reality. So then this awareness, that which seemed to be limited when I was, before I discriminated between awareness and mind, now that I have discriminated and I have separated awareness from mind, just as when I have separated the butter from the whey, right? Then the possibility is open for awareness to be the experience of this reality itself. So that gives us an experiential way to this recognition, to this understanding. And that's the one. That's why Jesus says, I am is the path. I am is the truth. I am is the life. But he says mostly, I am is the path.
Yeah.
And there is no access to the Father, meaning to reality, but through this I am. People understood that wrongly by thinking that it was Jesus as a person who said, I am the only path. Nobody has access to the Father, but through Jesus. So for instance, Buddha is not an access,
Sure.
right? But that's not what Jesus meant. He meant this I am. I am is the path, the truth, and the life, and there is no access to reality but through this I am. So that's why it is used in the Vedantic approach through the discrimination between awareness and the perceptions.
Yes. Yes. And so, then the not knowing part, right? If I am convinced that there's only one reality and awareness is that universal reality, then I'm not so much in not knowing. Is it that I just don't know all of it and leave it there and just say that, okay, it can be anything and everything and leave it there?
Well, there is the knowing that knows itself. It's called the perfume of the piece of the background.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. That is obvious. But and that is the knowing. But then, so when you say not knowing, it's just that I don't know what it is or what all it is.
Yeah, that, the Tao Te King says, the one who knows, the one who speaks doesn't know, the one who knows doesn't speak.
Ah,
Because, so he refers, Lao Tzu refers to a different type of knowledge, right? Doesn't refer to the knowledge of a mathematics professor knows when he speaks during his lecture, because then he speaks of, or she speaks of what she knows, right? Mathematical ideas and theorems and theories, etc. But Lao Tzu refers to a very different type of knowledge when he says the one who speaks doesn't know, the one who knows doesn't speak. Because the one who knows is not a person.
sure.
The
Sure.
one who knows is awareness, and this experience, no words can really describe it.
Yeah. I guess the only thing that I awareness know is that I am. That's it. And being, that's it. And everything else is open.
Yep.
Okay. And then, only then, this concept of the wave and the ocean becomes apparent.
Yes.
Okay. And which leads me to this other statement you made a couple of sessions ago. You know, the aloneness leads to oneness. So is that where you see, from the oneness, you see the ocean and the wave, or the ocean and the wave leads to oneness? Or is that no connection?
From the way the waves are the appearance. The ocean is the reality.
Yes.
All appearances point to reality, just as all paths lead to Rome. All objects point to this reality that emanates them.
Yeah. So this statement, aloneness leads to oneness, how does it relate to life is a celebration, is what you say often. And the other one is, you've said this also a few times, is be grateful that you are invited to this awesome show.
It's a poetic way to say it.
They all mean the same. I'm just looking to see whether I'm missing something, you know, or it is all just being.
Ultimately, it's all just being. But sometimes we take the vantage point of the relative plane, which is a kind of dualistic vantage point.
Mm.
For instance, Shankara, in his hymns or poems, he said something like, every morning I worship this Purusha, or something like that, I don't remember. So there seems to be a separation between the worshipper and the worshipped, or between the one who celebrates and that which is being celebrated. You find the same thing with Rumi.
Yes.
But in fact, what is being celebrated here is the oneness.
Yes.
So in the oneness, there is silence. There is no room for poetry. In order to create poetry, you need to create the celebrator and the celebrated, the worshipper and the worshipped. And the poem is simply the celebration of their identity.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's beautiful. That makes sense. Yeah. Thank you, Francis.
Francis, may I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Hi. This relates back to the first conversation with Alexios. My understanding up to this point has been that reality, there cannot be a reality without being, and there cannot be a reality without awareness. It's as if it's a kind of a trinity that is one. It's of course it's inseparable, but that there cannot be a reality without being, because it's that's just a an equivalence. But similarly, there cannot be a reality without awareness, because nothing, there cannot be any appearance. Appearance cannot arise without awareness. So my understanding has been that those are we kind of point to those as kind of three different pointers, but they're inseparably one. And it seemed that in the discussion earlier with Alexios, that it seemed to me that you were pointing to awareness as one of the qualities of reality rather than as a fundamental, an absolute fundamental of reality.
No, it depends. Okay, it hinges on the definition of awareness.
Okay.
I define awareness as a reality which is hearing these words right now. Okay?
Yes. Yes.
So, you, by definition, if you will,
Yes.
awareness is this reality. There is not the slightest difference between them.
Okay.
Okay? But does it mean that this reality is limited to the perceiving of these worlds? That's a question.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
Or that this reality is limited to the act of perceiving? That's a second question. So just as this reality, which is hearing these words right now, is not limited to the act of perceiving these words. Since when I stop speaking, reality goes on, right? Awareness
Yes.
goes on. So just as reality is not limited to the perceiving of these words, it is not limited either to or by the act of perceiving itself.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I mean, I see what you're saying, uh, uh, but it seems that when we're talking about perceiving in this way, we're talking about perceiving as we know it in our human experience, whereas my understanding of awareness with a capital A, the awareness as the reality, as the reality, meaning equals to, equivalent to the reality that is perceiving everything that is reality.
We know that whatever there is perceiving, there is a perceiving reality, aka awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So it is always the same. For instance, in this moment, it is the same perceiving reality in you and in me, perceiving my thoughts and your thoughts simultaneously. Okay, it's the same reality because there is only one reality.
Yes, yes, yes. So
But
then
that doesn't imply that this reality is limited to the act of perceiving.
um uh I don't see that that is it I don't grasp that is a limitation if that is a component of its very definition, of its very identity. If awareness is a component of the very identity of reality, as just as being is a
No, no,
component of
awareness is not a component. Awareness is the reality that
is the
perceives.
reality. Yeah, yes,
Okay, so, okay, let me use a metaphor for that.
okay,
Let's take this lady, she is a mother, right? And she is an elementary school teacher, right?
sure,
Now,
yes,
let's assume you ask me, what is the reality that teaches these second graders? I see it's Miss Phillips, the teacher, right? It's Miss Phillips who is the reality who teaches these kids. Now, who is the reality who takes care of John Phillips? I say it's Miss Phillips, his mother. In one case, she acts in the capacity of a teacher, in the other case, in the capacity of a mother. Now, although the reality that teaches the second grade in this school is Miss Phillips, it doesn't imply that Miss Phillips is restricted to the role of being a teacher. She can also be a mother.
yes,
She can also be a spouse. She can also be a tennis player or a musician.
yes,
No, so
yes,
yeah.
yes. Well, but so part of it that I see differently at the moment is that um, the awareness that is reality is inseparable. It is inseparable, and that reality is inseparable from awareness. That just as the
Yeah,
being,
definitely, just as a teacher is inseparable from the teacher of these second graders in this school, is
uh,
inseparable from Miss Phillips.
mhm,
But let's assume you are another of these kids in this elementary school. You only see Miss Phillips playing her role as a teacher. And due to your lack of information, you are just a kid, right? You think that that's all Miss Phillips does in her life. You are not aware of Miss Phillips being a mother. She has a 6 months old baby she's taking care
yes,
of. And now
right,
she's going back to playing tennis after her pregnancy. And then she's singing in a choir. And you, this
yes,
second grader, you see her only as a teacher.
yeah. Okay, I guess what what I what I what I would point to is that that any of the qualities um, that we think of having to do with reality, say love, happiness, peace, fulfillment, intelligence, that that any of the qualities of reality, uh, there has to be awareness for any of those qualities to be.
To be or to be perceived.
To be.
I don't know that, for instance, eternity,
Uh-huh.
for eternity to be, it has to be perceived. I don't know for infinity to be that it has to be perceived. I don't know for creation to be that it has to be perceived. I don't know whether for annihilation to be that it has to be perceived.
So I think I'm getting the confusion is between the words awareness and perception, because I think I see awareness as is it as much more than just perception as we know it. You know,
Yeah, that's why I define it as
yes,
reality.
yes, okay,
I define it as a reality that perceives,
yes,
but it
yes,
is not a limitative definition. In other words, the reality
right,
that perceives can also be the reality that creates, just as Miss
right.
Phillips, who teaches these kids, can also be the tennis player, the mother, etc.
Yes, yes, yes. That all is very clear. I think it's that when I'm referring to awareness in my understanding of it, I'm referring to something that is far more than just perception.
The same thing. We agree. I refer it as
Oh,
reality.
okay,
The reality that
okay,
perceives. It's far,
okay.
just as Miss Phillips is far more than an
Yes.
elementary school teacher.
Okay. All right. All right. Um, and would you also agree that that there cannot be a reality without that the reality cannot be without awareness, that
If you
reality.
define if you define awareness as a modality,
Yes.
or if you define awareness as, then you cannot. If you define awareness as an attribute, then you cannot have substance. You cannot have the attribute without having the substance.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Okay.
and you cannot
Yes.
have the substance without having the attribute. But I
Yeah. Yeah.
even go further than that. I
Okay.
equate that. I define
Yes.
awareness as reality,
Yes. Yes.
as the
Eh,
reality
eh,
that perceives. And
yes.
therefore, the reality that perceives is not limited to perceiving. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
I agree.
we have
And
no right to limit the reality that perceives to perceiving. And that's a
yes.
problem in
Okay.
this.
Yes, I see that. And in that statement, defining awareness as the reality that perceives, being is in that statement as well. So that statement has within it awareness, reality, and being
For me, being and reality are the same.
are the same. That okay.
Yeah,
But
the
yes,
proper, to be more precise, the more proper definition would be being. But it's too physical, it's too metaphysical, it's too philosophical a term. But the proper definition would be
mm,
being, or if we go into Spinoza, substance.
okay.
But I use it reality. Reality has a different connotation because it refers to rest, the being, and rest are the beings, the things, right? Rest,
Yes,
uh,
yes.
the things. So reality can be conceived in two ways. Either it can be the set of all things,
Hmm. Hmm.
or in other words, the set of all beings, which is not the way I use, or it can be even the external physical world in the more modern definition of reality, or it could be that which make things things, the thingness of things,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's what the TI at the end means, the reality of that which is real, that which endows things with
With
reality, that
their
makes things
yes.
real, but itself
Yeah.
not a thing. That takes us to Heidegger
Right. Right.
about the meaning of being in the beginning of Sein und Zeit, that
Mhm.
it is the that it is prior, if you will, being is prior to the things.
Well,
Being
that's
is
why
prior to the beings. So and
yes.
that's when I use the word, why I use the word reality. But in
Yes.
fact, if I was more cautious, reality, you would have that. You would have being as the overarching thing,
Yes.
and then or substance, being or substance, and you would have reality as one of the attributes of substance,
Ah,
and you could have awareness as another attribute of substance. But in my case, I don't use the attribute versions. I define
yes.
reality and beings are the same, and
Uh-huh.
I define awareness as the reality that perceives,
Yes.
and I define
Yes.
being, also reality, as that which creates the universe, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for being so precise. That helped me to grasp that when you make that statement, awareness is the reality that is perceiving these words. I see where you're purposefully not. You're leaving it a little bit open there.
completely open, not a little bit,
Completely
wide
open.
open.
Yes. Yes. I could feel that this time. I could feel the open-endedness of that definition more clearly this time. Um, so yes, thank you. And in the past, I've used the word beingness to distinguish the substance, you might say, before the ultimate substance, the fundamental substance, before it actually manifests into specific being, as manifestation. I don't have to go there right now, but okay. Um, well, thank you very much, Francis.
Wait, that's a distinction that the same as Heidegger makes between being with a capital B and
Yes,
the beings. It's in the
right,
ancient Greek.
right.
They call it also the one.
Yeah,
Uh,
yes,
but
yes. And I think when you were pointing to that the word reality coming from res, or king, or I think of it as ultimate. uh,
oh no,
the
it doesn't come from king. No, it comes from res. It
res.
doesn't come from king is rex.
Oh,
Rex.
okay. Oh,
Res is
okay.
very different.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'll do a little word tracking on that. But but I, but I think of it as the ultimate, that beyond which there is, there's nothing beyond it. The it is the ultimate conceivable. So okay.
Okay,
Thank
Melissa, thank you.
thank you so much, Francis.